I got this tote bag. Going to show you 6 different options on how to sew the sides. So I've got this leather tote bag class coming up. Students are going to choose their hides, cut out the whole pattern, sew the sides, all in a day. Should be a fun class. But I wanted to give them different options on how to sew the sides. So I came up with 6 different variations, and I'll show you how to sew each one right now. Okay, so on the screen you're going to see the dimensions that I'm working with and how I've laid out each one of these samples. The stitch spacing I'm using is 5 millimeters, so my 2 dimensions are divisible by 5, so 50 mil and 100 mil stitch lengths. I've offset by 4 millimeters, so you'll see that there. If you're using a different stitch spacing, if you're using 4 millimeters, make sure your stitch line is a number that's divisible by 4 so that your stitch marks land in the corners properly. One thing I will note about these patterns is that I've pre-punched all of them. So I punched down each side of the bag and I punched along the gussets. That's why getting your stitch spacing placed accurately is so important, because then you can do that. So when this comes together, I don't have to punch through multiple layers of leather because I've pre-punched it. So then I just have to align the holes and then it stitches really easily. I really like pre-punching whenever possible. It just makes it a lot easier and removes any possibility that when you punch, it's going to get off, it's going to get skewed, whatever the case may be. So all of these samples were pre-punched. Okay, so option number 1 is on the sample bag that I made. So I didn't actually film this one, but I'll show you an option in option number 2. It is a flat stitch side with the gusset still intact, so it's not cut out, and then it's simply riveted to the outside of the bag. So that's a cool option. You just stitch the side, fold this up, rivet it in place. That's really neat. This type of stitch is a bit of a pain in the butt to do, because if you can imagine trying to sew this, you're working right inside the bag and you kind of work through. With this not in place, it's a bit easier, but the stitch a bit of a pain in the butt, but the result I think is very nice. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is the exact same structure, except we fold the gusset to the inside and rivet it in place there. So this one, you can see we just stitch it like we normally would. I'm not using a stitching pony for any one of these. It's all just freehand. Stitch through. Again, this one's a bit of a pain in the butt when you have the whole bag to stitch, but like I said, the results I think are really nice. Once the stitching's done, you just fold it in and then rivet it to the inside. So it gives a nice clean look. I like the flat stitch. That's a nice one. Option number 3 is probably the most traditional way to finish or to stitch a bag. It's just going to be folding the seam and stitching on the inside, and then folding the gusset and stitching that on the inside, flipping the bag right side out, and then you're left with a very traditional tote bag seam. The only thing I'll note is notice the corner cutout that I've done here is slightly different. So to make it a bit easier, I just cut the corners when the template was flat, so that it creates that little V-notch. You can see that when I stitch it, it loops right over. Now you do see that little exposed bit there, but functionally it works perfectly fine, and you don't see any gaps when it gets folded on the outside. So traditional stitch, nothing fancy going on here. You've probably done this one already. That is option number 3. So option number 4 is bringing our sides together and stitching it, not stitching the gusset, flip the bag inside out, fold your gusset, and then stitch. Then fold the bag right side out again, and you're left with a very cool kind of disappearing side, disappearing stitch almost. I don't know. It kind of gives a bit more of a elongated profile in the bag once it's in its full state. But I like how it finishes off and kind of disappears into the gusset. This might be one of my favorite ones to do. This one's obviously a lot easier to do than the others because it's just a straight stitch there and then a flat stitch there. Option number 5, just like we did before, we're going to stitch the outside side, exterior side first, as we normally would, but this time we don't flip the bag, and then we stitch the gusset flat. That creates 2 exposed edges that need to be burnished on the outside, but the result, I think, is a pretty neat looking side gusset. Now again, when you stitch the gusset on the outside, keep in mind when it's lying down, there's going to be a lot of wear on this seam. So keep that in mind with this method. There is going to be a lot of wear here because that does sit lower just based on the profile. It's hard to duplicate. You can see this part is sticking down. Keep that in mind. If you do this style, this edge, it's going to see a lot of wear. 6th and final option, we start by stitching the side inside out, flip the bag right side out, and then stitch our gusset. The result is a nice hidden seam here, and then we have the exterior stitch line here, just like in the last one. Again, keep in mind with this, we do have this piece that's going to be sticking below the bottom of the bag, so this one will see quite a bit of wear. So just keep that in mind with this style of exposed gusset stitching. So those are 6 different options for different gusset styles you can do on a leather tote bag, market bag, whatever you want to call it. If you want to get the plans, I don't have any plans because it's really simple. So I'll go back to the beginning of the video, click on the section where I've popped it up over here, pause it, take note of what I've done, and then lay out your dimensions based on the size of the bag that you want. Just make sure your stitch line is always divisible by your stitch spacing. So again, mine was 50 mil on the short side, 100 mil on the long side, so that my corners line up perfectly, even though I don't punch the corners. Notice that on the, I'll put it up again right here, notice the little red circles, I don't punch those holes. That is to account for the wrap around here. So the middle hole is the one that would land here, and then one on either side. I've omitted those holes, I don't punch them. So when you see that round circle on the screenshot here, that's what that is. And again, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. Head over to my website, norfolkhandmade.com. Check out the things I've got going on over there. New products, plans, resource section, norfolkhandmade.com/resources for a complete list of suppliers from all over the world. I'm further developing that list. I will eventually be breaking it down into what those suppliers specialize in, whether it's leather, hardware, clicker dies, brass stamps, whatever they specialize in. I'll break that list down even further as the months go along. So if you have any suppliers that I have not listed there, please let me know in the comment section below and I will get them added. Thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.